Hi, it's Jordan Teen 1, and in this video I'm excited to show you the latest creation from the makers of Rainbow Loom, and it's called the Alpha Loom. So I'm going to show you what it's all about, and I will also show you a tutorial on how to make this really cool Creeper Minecraft bracelet. So here's what the front of the box looks like. And then if you flip it over, here's what it looks like on the back. So they give you some examples of some really cool bracelets that you can make. And then inside, let me show you what comes with it here. You have the actual Alpha Loom, which is really a nice, thick, sturdy loom. It's kind of similar to the Monster Tail loom if you're familiar with that. But this one actually has 14 pins in total, so there's 7 sets that are right across from one another, and they are fixed, they can't move or anything. And then it has a little hole on one side, which is nice because that way you know if you're making your design you want to keep the hole to the right every time, or if you started it with the left, or if you have it facing this way, you just know to keep that in the same spot every time so your bracelet stays the same. And then also if you wanted to, you could add some kind of a ring on here, like from a key ring, and you could attach this to something. And then the big deal here is this comb, the Alpha comb, and it has 7 hooks on it. So that's going to let you loom, according to the box, 7 times faster. So you're just going to stick it in, grab all 7 at once, pull it over the top. Otherwise you would be using your hook and you would just be doing 1 every time, so you would have to take 14 bands off, 1 at a time, where here you can take 7 off at a time. And then the other side here you would use to actually push your work down every time. And then the hook that comes in here is really cool. I actually don't have one this color yet, so I'm happy to get this. And it's the metal hook, and this is far superior, I think, to the solid plastic one that they initially had come out with. So I only use the metal one every time. And then as far as your bands, the bands that come in here, it says there are 1,200 latex-free bands, and it actually comes with 5 colors. I don't have any black in here because I took them all out to make my bracelet, but it comes with yellow, red, white, blue, and black. And then let me just show you the size of the rubber bands. I have a couple out here. So this is the size of the Alpha Loom bands. You can see they're very small. And then let me just show you compared to a regular Rainbow Loom band. You can see that these are about half the size of the original bands. And then if you look at the side here, you can see the thickness compared to, here's a regular band. You can see how thick that is. So definitely smaller and thicker. And then you also get a pack of clear bands, and these are what you're going to use to tie each of the rows together. So they're going to stretch across all 7 pins. And you get a pack of these. I'm not quite sure how many come in here. And these are regular size. And then you also get a pack of C-clips that comes in here. And it says there are 48 C-clips. And then lastly, you'll get an instruction manual, which is underneath the box here. At least that's where mine came. And you can see on the front here, inspired by Rob from Justin's Toys. So that's pretty cool. And then it shows you instructions inside of what to do. And then let me just quick show you, there are these templates that come inside to help you measure your wrist. And I would suggest that you make photocopies of this, and that way you can keep using them over and over again. So you would just cut this out, measure the size of your wrist so you know how many rows you need to make it, and then you can just color in your pattern of the grid here that you want to make, your design. And for mine, I actually didn't use the template that came in the box. I decided to do it on an Excel spreadsheet. I just found that to be a little bit easier for me personally. So you can see here, this is the template that we will be using to make our creeper bracelet. So let me just point out here, with my creeper bracelet, I did use the black Alpha Loom bands that came in the box, and you can see how they look. But then for the actual creeper, I didn't have any green, so I used the regular Rainbow Loom green jelly bands for that. So if you look at the design, you can see that the green is thicker, so it sticks out more. And that's because you have to double the regular Rainbow Loom bands if you want to use them on the Alpha Loom. So it definitely makes it thicker looking. And I actually really liked the way that this came out. I like that the creepers are more puffy and sticking out further than the rest. But if you don't like that look, you would have to use all of the same kind of rubber band. So you would use just the regular Rainbow Loom black and double it, and then also the green. Eventually they are going to come out with other colors for the Alpha Loom bracelets, but as of right now, or at least with this package that I received, I just had these 5 sort of primary colors to work with. I'm going to do the first 10 rows with you, and then I'll let you finish it out on your own since it's just a repeating pattern. So the number of bands that I have here on the right hand side is just the amount that I need to complete the first 10 rows, but in total I'll be using 218 black, 160 green, and then 54 of the clear. So you may find yourself needing to use more or less than that. So it is pretty long. You're probably going to wind up using less than what I did. Especially if you're making it for a child size wrist, you're definitely going to have to use less. Maybe you'll only fit 3 creepers on. And let me just show you on my bracelet here, I did 6 rows of black in between the creepers. So if you wanted to shorten the bracelet, just use less rows of black in between. And I used 54 rows for my bracelet, and when I measured it, the length was about 7 3/4 inches. Now in the upper left hand corner, I am going to put a little diagram of what I'm making just to help you follow along. So the bracelet starts with 2 rows of all black, and I've decided that I'm going to keep my loom vertically like this because I think it's a little bit easier to see this way. And I am always going to be having this little hole facing down to the bottom. And the first row is going to have to get twisted just because it's the very first one. So you're placing it on, twisting it, making a figure 8, and moving it to the other side. We're going to do that for each set of pins here, so there's going to be a total of 7. And you will notice that these bands are pretty tight to get on, at least I feel like they are. I think it is a bit more of a struggle than when you're using the average size bands. But I think after a little bit of practice it does get a little bit easier when you get more familiar with it. And when I do this second row, I'll show you something that you can do as an alternative if you find you're really struggling to put these on. So you can see just that first layer we have twisted, and then what you're going to do is take the sort of flat side, it does have little bumps here, but the non-hook side of your comb, and you're just going to push that all the way down to the bottom. Because you always want to be making room on the pins to add your next layer of bands. And now in between every layer you need to put on a clear band that is going to just link all of these layers together. So I'm taking a clear, and it doesn't matter which side you put it on, but I'm going to put mine across the left and just stay consistent throughout. So I'm stretching it all the way from the bottom to the top. And then I need to do my second layer of black. And let me just show you what I was talking about as an alternative way. If you're really having a hard time stretching this across, you can just stick the band on one of the pins, use your hook, and just make sure you're only grabbing that top black and stretch it across with your hook. So I actually do find that easier to do, but then that does make it more time consuming because you're having to use your hook every time to stretch it across, which doesn't take a considerably long amount of time, but the whole point of having the comb is to make this whole process faster. So if you're having to do that every time, it may be defeating the purpose just a little bit. So I'm just going to do it with my fingers here. And then also, let me just point out that as you're placing these on, sometimes the bands look like they get twisted around. And the smoother that the bands are, the nicer that your bracelet's going to look. So if it looks like they get twisted at all, just take your hook and just carefully run it along and smooth it out there. And then it'll look much neater when it's done. So let me just go all the way down to the bottom here. You can see this one just doesn't want to catch on that pin there. So once you have that second layer on, what you need to do is get the clear band to come off of the side and into the middle. So you just want to use your hook and just slide that right off of there and put it right smack dab in the middle. And then once you've done that, you want to take the bottom layer and move it over the top. So here's where you're going to take the hook part of your comb, and you can hold it this way with the hooks facing inward, or you can do it this way with the hooks facing outward. So I'll show you with the hooks facing in first. You're just going to grab all of these bands, make sure you get all 7 of them, and it is definitely a little bit tight to do. So just pull them out and then just wiggle them a little bit back and forth until they make it over, and then sort of tilt inward and they'll release. Now let me just spin this around and I'll show you the other way. If you want to have the hooks facing outward, you can just go in there and then move your hook over to the left, and when that pushes against there, it's going to naturally pull this out, and then if you just wiggle just back and forth a little bit, it'll release. So then once you've done that, you just need to take the other side here and push all of this down to the bottom. That's important that you're getting it all the way down, just so you have all that extra room to work with on your pins. And now let me just spin this back around. You always want to make sure that you reset this and that this little circle is in whatever position it is when you started before you start to add your next layer, because you don't want to get the orientation of the design mixed up. And so the next thing I need to do is add my clear band. So again, I'm always going to be putting it over on the left, but it really doesn't matter if you do it right or left, because it's always just going to come off and lay right in the center. And then for this next layer, it's going to be all green. And since I have the regular size Rainbow Loom bands, I am going to have to double these. And so the easiest way that I found is to just place it on the pin, twist, and then just loop it back on. And then in order to stretch it across, I'm just going to use my hook, grab the 2 loops, and then stretch it straight over to the right. So I think I'm going to just go all the way down, doubling the bands on the left side here, and then I'll stretch them all across after I get these on here. So after you do this a few times, it gets pretty easy to do, I think. Can usually zip through this part. And if you have another method of doubling the bands that you prefer, you can certainly use that. You can double it on your hook and then place it on. So now that I got them all on, I'm just going to stretch these across. You just have to make sure that you're not grabbing this clear band. It kind of gets in the way a little bit. And here's my last one at the bottom. And then I want the clear band to come off and into the center. And then I'll use my Alpha comb to pull all 7 at once over. So again, it's your choice which direction you want the hooks to be facing. I'm going to have mine facing inward. And then on the left side, I'll try and do this with my left hand, even though I'm not naturally left-handed. But I think it'll be easier than having to keep spinning it around every time. And then you're going to push all of this down. And now I have to get the clear band on again. And then the pattern for my next row are that the second and third pins down are going to have a black band on. So that's for the eyes of the creeper. So I'm going to do those first. I find it easier to do the black first, and then I know that the rest in that row are just going to be green. It looks like this one's a little bit twisted here. And now the rest of the pins are going to have a doubled green band on here. So I'm just going to do the doubling part first. And now I'm just going to stretch the green ones over. So there's no doubt that making any of these Alpha Loom bracelets, especially if you're using all 7 rows, is going to be time consuming, at least compared to some other bracelets. But working with this comb is definitely helping to cut down on the time that it needs. So now, if you are using doubled bands, you may find it more difficult to use the comb to pull those over. I find that the doubled bands are much tighter. So let me just see here. Pull them out and just wiggle back and forth and over. You may really struggle with that. You do have to have a lot of strength, I think, to do that. And if you cannot do that, then you're just going to have to use your hook and pull those doubled bands over one at a time. And then on the left here, I actually didn't get my clear band over, so let me do that first. And I don't know how well I'm going to do this with my left hand because my left arm is a bit weaker, but let me see if I can get this to come off, and no problem there. And then I'm just going to push all of this down. So I have my clear band, and now for this next row I have the second and third pin that are black, so let me do them first. And then I also have the 5th and 6th pin that are black. So let me do them. And these look a little bit twisted, so let me just straighten them out. And now I know all the rest are green. Just pull these over. And now my clear band comes over. And then I'll do both sides here. have my clear on the left. In my next row, I have 2 black, so it's the 4th and 5th pin down from the top. So let me do those. Straighten them out. I find that they often get twisted when I put them on. And now green for the rest. So initially when I was designing this Minecraft bracelet, I thought that I would actually just make one creeper and then spell out the letters Minecraft, which you can certainly do, but I was afraid that it would get way too long just because it is pretty many letters. So after I made the first creeper, I thought it looked so cool, and my son is really into Minecraft, and he has been for probably about the last year or so. And so I consulted him and asked if he thought it would look cool with all creepers, and he said he thought it would, so that's what I went with. Now I'll get that clear into the center. So hopefully you're getting the hang of this by now. It is a little bit more difficult to work with, at least pulling them all over at once and making sure that you're getting them all. But once you get the feel for it, it is so much quicker. So I'll do my clear band. And then in this next layer, it's going to be a repeat of the previous. So once again, we'll have the black bands on the 4th and 5th pins. And then let me just straighten these out. And now green for the rest. And then I'll just get all of the green stretched over to the right here. Now I'll get that clear into the center. Get my clear band. And then again in this row we're doing 4 black. We have the 2nd and 3rd pins. That one just did not want to go on. I think my fingers must be getting tired. And then the 5th and 6th pins again. Black. And now the rest are green. I can feel that this is growing out the bottom and it's sort of wanting to stick against the desk here. And when you're pulling these over, if for some reason one of them doesn't make it over, it's really not a big deal. You can just take your hook and just do it after you're done here. Because once in a while you might get one that escapes off these hooks. It's really no problem. You can see this is starting to not want to lay flat for me since it's growing out the bottom here. And this next row has a black on the second and one on the third. This is the outer edge of the eye. Now the rest are green. Just take a pile over here. So we're just going to have one more after this. And of course, if you don't feel like taking the time to make a whole bracelet, you can always just do a couple rows of black, make your creeper, and do a couple more rows of black, and then just use it as a cute little charm, or you can put it on your backpack or something. So for this last row, let me do my clear, and then the remaining row is going to be all green. Whoops, I made this one come off. I'll just get the sides off, make sure I get all of them here. This is definitely a tight one. Struggling myself here a little bit. And push this all down. So it's a little bit hard to see, but it's starting to come along here. And so now you're just going to continue doing the same pattern. As I said earlier, you're going to have to determine how many black rows you want in between your creepers. And obviously the fewer rows that you do, the shorter that your bracelet's going to be. So you can pause your video here and continue making your bracelet. And then once it gets long enough, you can come back to the tutorial and I will show you how to remove it from the loom. When you have your bracelet to the length that you'd like and you're ready to remove it from the loom, what you want to do is get all of the bands to be on the same side. So I'm going to get all of mine to go over onto the left here. So one at a time, I'm just going to move them over. And don't worry if they get a little bit twisted. I mean, you want to try and keep them relatively straight, but if they get a little bit twisted around, it's okay. And then if you wanted to, you could add a clip onto each one of these 7 pins here. So for example, here's a C-clip. You would just attach it through both of the bands, and then once you got all 7 pins taken care of, you would just take it off, and then you could attach it to the other end. But the problem with doing that is, since you're dealing with so many clips, there's a better chance that one of the bands could work loose over time, and then your bracelet might come apart. And since I'm sure you worked really hard on it, I know you don't want that to happen. So I'll show you a different way that you can close this off. I have 7 regular sized black rubber bands, and what I'm going to do is to take each one and I'm going to pull it up through the 2 bands that are on each one of the pins, and then I will connect them that way. So I'll start here at the bottom, and I'm going to take my hook and go down through these 2 bands. Take my first black band, and I'm going to pull it up through. Let me just get it laying more flat here. Pull it up through, get the other end back on my hook. Now I'm going to go down through the next 2 bands from the top and leave these 2 loops that are on my hook here. I'm going to pull up my next rubber band, and I want to get the other end back on. I just let it go, which I should not have done. Just get it back on there. So now you can see I have 4 loops on here. I'm going to take the 2 that are closest to the base of my hook, and I'm just going to pull those over the other 2. And then I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going up to the next pin, going down through. Pull up my next band through those 2 loops, get the other end back on. Again, you're going to have the 4 loops, and now the 2 closest to the base are just going to pull over the other 2. So essentially I'm just sort of weaving these together. You can see they're getting a little bit twisted, and then I'm working my way up. Pull through the next and get it back on my hook. Bottom 2 pull over the top. Just going to keep going all the way up here. Pull up my next band. Get those to go through. So I have 2 left here. And then here's my last one. And finally the 2 pull through the other 2. So I have just 2 bands left on my hook. And then I'm going to take a C-clip or an S-clip, whatever you have available. And I'm just going to make sure it gets through both of those loops there. And now I can remove this. And you can see that it is nice and solid there. It's never going to come apart. The only thing you have to worry about is these two bands on the end. And then if you wanted to now, you could add the C clips or S clips and attach it to the other side here. Or you could also sew these two sides together, and you would just take some additional bands and then sort of do the same thing like I showed you to close this off to sew the two sides together. I hope that everyone loves their new Minecraft Creeper Bracelets and that you're excited about the new Alpha Loom. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook, post pictures of your creations to my Facebook page, and please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on my latest tutorials. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please feel free to subscribe to those as well. Thanks for watching!